Love the enthusiasm tonight. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is a presentation with John Luthringer, our superintendent, and Frank Koza, our high school principal, regarding the student ex officio board member.
You did, yes, the student ex officio board member. So thank you so much, Katie and the Board of Education. So as we've talked about previously in previous months here, there is and I'm not going to go into all those past details, but there's a recent regulation that requires all school districts in New York State to bring on board a student ex officio board member. And since that time when we first started talking about it, there has been quite a bit of work occurring through the shared decision-making body of the high school, which is called Forum. Mr. Koza and I are going to present today the feedback that the board charged them with. And to start, just as kind of a reminder here, the Board of Education did charge the Forum, the shared decision-making body of the junior senior high school, with respectfully reviewing the regulations for adding a student ex officio member of the board. And the Board of Education requests feedback on 3 specific areas. Mr. Koza is going to go into those areas and kind of the nuances that exist within Forum and how that exchange between the constituents of Forum and the district has occurred over the last couple of months. And then we're going to get into the feedback on the 3 specific charges.
So you'll see, as a reminder from the charge that you gave Forum, the selection criteria was first and foremost. From here forward, we'll refer to things as number 1, 2, or 3. So for number 1, the selection criteria, the process to select the student, and how to ensure broad student representation. The second thing that you asked of us was the number of students that this would include and how that would take place. And then the third, what does the ideal model for student participation look like? So from that charge, what we did is we developed a document to capture the entire staff's feedback on those three topics through a series of meetings where our Forum first educated themselves about the new legislation. We wanted to learn about what the law was. The second is we wanted to really understand the charge. And I had to go back and forth a few times with John to get some clarity. But we spent at Forum a good deal of time really understanding what the charge was. And then the Forum members went back to their constituents with that understanding to start the feedback process. From the large constituents back to Forum, from Forum back to the large constituents, back to Forum, this process went back and forth several times, getting feedback on those 3 items. So for the first charge, the eligibility and the selection process, this is where Forum landed in terms of our first recommendations to the Board of Ed to consider. Right now, what Forum would recommend is that it's open to grades 9 through 11, which means it would be rising 10th through 12th grade students. So those students in May would be in grades 9 through 11, so that the following September or July 1, they are in grades 10, 11, and 12. Forum landed on a recommendation of 2 positions. And we'll talk a little about that through our discussion with you tonight. An equal co-representation, that there would be 2 students who would share the responsibility as student board reps. They would also be tasked with attending student council meetings. The election time frame, it would occur at the same time as our regular student council elections, which are held in May for the upcoming year. The appointments for the Board of Ed could occur either in June or July, which would be after that election, and it would be a building-wide election. So currently our 12th graders sit out of that election. They do not vote for next year's positions. So we would utilize that ballot process. Moving forward to the eligibility, again, further information about the eligibility in the selection process. Like I said, it would be the current 9th through 11th grade for the following year, 10 through 12. We wanted a statement of interest from the student. So their first step, if this is something that they would like to be considered to be eligible for that May election, that they would write a statement of interest, why they would be interested in being the student board rep. They also would have to solicit a recommendation, a statement of support from a Lake George staff member, a Lake George teacher. We thought that would be very important, that it would task them with those two written pieces. Myself, along with the student council advisor, would review those two pieces of documentation that are submitted. The other qualifications that our recommendation comes from Forum with is that the student is in good academic standing and consistent school attendance. We're very purposeful in that word good and very purposeful in that word consistent. So it allows for some discretion in the interpretation of academic standing and attendance, because we understand they're kids. That they are comfortable with public speaking, have an interest in government, history, or community involvement. That this isn't something random or arbitrary, that they have actual vested interests in those arenas. The ability to analyze issues and represent student viewpoints, which is important, because if they're going to be representing the student body, you have to be able to articulate that. And of course, based on what they submit, myself, along with the student council advisor, would determine if they are eligible to be in the election that coming May. Going along the lines again of why we chose two, we thought it would be important. You had tasked us with a system to promote continuity and fresh perspectives. So we wanted to be able to accomplish both. And if you think of it, those are contradictory statements, right? That you want continuity, but you also want fresh perspectives. Well, by having two, that allows for that. One, if you have a 10th grader who is interested in serving a second year or even a third year, they could, which would give that continuity. It also allows for and affords for, by a one-year term, that others who are interested, if they mount a successful campaign, could unseat somebody, or if somebody's just not interested, they don't run again, and then we have another fresh perspective. It allows for also the opportunity of perhaps having two veterans over the course of 2 years, but no more than two, because there would always be somebody cycling off.
So as we get to the third charge, where I think Mr. Kokoza would agree, this is where a large chunk of the time was spent going back and forth and getting feedback. And I was at Forum today, and as I shared earlier briefly with Katie, there were still some recommendations and changes that we were making today. We heard from student council reps, so there were students as part of that, and parents and teachers as well. So this is definitely one of those things where is looking at the roles and responsibilities of the student. This is something that was given a lot of great thought. So this slide references the student responsibilities to the Board of Education. Again, some of the recommendations are that the student would give a monthly student update at board meetings from the student perspective. It could be, these are some examples here, a student report on student happenings in the district, student events. It could be feedback from the student body, something that's going on, perhaps a survey is going on, or some other pieces of information that would be beneficial for the board to know. So part of that would include meeting with the high school principal and or the superintendent monthly prior to the monthly student update at the board meeting to develop that report and kind of the monthly focus that they would want to share with the Board of Education. We did talk a little bit about the potential for additional board committee responsibilities. There's nothing saying that students can't participate in other committees, but one thing that we heard a lot about today, which we'll see on a future slide, is we know how busy our students are. And we know that we want this to be successful. So that was something that was talked a lot about today and through all the constituent groups. Just being conscious of that and how busy and how our students are going a million different places all the time. And as we continue to shrink, a lot of those students are tasked with additional responsibilities at the school level as well. Part of that as well would be if there's two co-representatives, that coordinating board meeting attendance. So perhaps working with the board development committee and along with Ms. Kokoza and I, looking across the year and scheduling things. We know students that are involved with sports, so trying to have representatives, a representative at each of the board meetings would be a priority. And then, of course, there's opportunities for student input on important Board of Education decisions. That's really one of the main points of this legislation, is to hear from students, especially in decision-making processes. And then also the student being a liaison to the student body and sharing information with the Board of Education about future, perhaps, decisions that the board needs to make. This slide references the student's responsibility back to the student body. So one of the things is that the student does represent student voice at Board of Education meetings. It would provide clear communication channels to share information with students and gather student feedback. And of course, throughout all of this, it would be an increase in student engagement in the educational process. Having a student at the table and learning about government and participating in those discussions is really at the heart of this regulation. There was a lot of discussion today about the importance of that student attending student council meetings. Really, those meetings are highly important to hear and learn about what's going on at the student level. So their responsibility would be to report back. So if they were to come at the meeting, they would follow at the monthly student council meeting to share. The timing of that works really nicely. That's something that we talked about today. So the student council meeting is held the week after the board meeting. So it does work out really nicely with that sort of rotation of coming to a board meeting and then going back to student council, gathering or sharing feedback, and then coming back to the board meeting. So it does work out nicely. And then, obviously we have so many different ways in the junior senior high school to solicit student feedback and thoughts, but we would continue to use existing structures as a means to gathering student feedback to be brought back to the Board of Education. These were some of the additional feedback that we wanted to just share with you that didn't necessarily fall into the charge, but we thought this would be important as the board continues to consider the best path forward here. But we know how important training and support is. We know that for anybody, when we bring on a new staff member or teacher, they're assigned mentors, they take part in professional development, when that same thing happens with new board members as well. So the thought that having that type of system for a student would be really beneficial to the student as well, helping guide them through the process, different procedures, understanding Robert's Rules of Order, effective communication, and having one board member be a mentor was something that we heard from all the constituent groups. One of the things that we actually looked at from a mentor school district is a Board of Education handbook to guide students. Our board members have a handbook. There could be a pared down version for students, perhaps, that would help define roles and responsibilities and expectations. And again, one of the major themes that was discussed a lot at each meeting is that the constraints that we have are on our student times. So, or student time constraints with all that they're doing. So we know this could be a large commitment for students. That's, not only do they have to attend a board meeting, but they also have to attend student council meetings in addition to whatever else they might have on their plate. So one of the thoughts and discussions was sometimes we know our meetings can go long into the evening, but is there a consistent exit time that we could prep students for, that they would be able to perhaps leave if they have other events or things like that. So these are some things I think that can be worked out, but these are just some of the sentiments that trying to protect the time of the student and all that they have on their plates. So that was just some additional considerations that we discussed at forum. And I know that at this point, these are some of the things. So if there are questions or discussion that the board would like to have, and if there are topics that are things that you would like to come back from forum, we still have time for that. Again, the The timeline for this is we have to have something, we have to have a student board member in place by July 1st. So we're still in a really good spot with time. We're in January. So if there's additional feedback or information, certainly that's something that we could gather. So at this time, we'd open it up to any questions or board discussion about this topic.
I guess my question is, so there'll be two students. Is the intention that they would take turns being here? So one would be here at a time, that they would kind of rotate, and that way both students didn't have to do it every month? Or would they both be here as often as they could? Has that
Yep.
been discussed?
Excellent question. So if you go back one slide, John, to answer your question, Donna, the number one thing that all of the constituents continually gave feedback around was that time commitment. And there was a significant concern around whether it would be fair for one individual student to be able to do 10 months worth of meetings or 8 months worth of meetings, along with any committee, along with student council, along with an additional meeting with John or I or both of us. So the thought in having two is that they could perhaps split the responsibilities, or if they're both willing and able, both be present and contribute at all of the above. That it would more or less be up to them along with their mentor, and planning with John and I, what they're going to attend and when they're going to attend. So for example, if you have both students who are, let's say for just to explain, they're both student athletes, and one plays a fall sport, one plays a winter sport. Well, perhaps the fall sport student might not be able as active as they can for the fall, and the winter sport student would pick up the slack during the fall. Or if they're both on a fall sport, they got to figure out how to best manage their time and perhaps split the responsibilities so it doesn't fall to one. However, giving them the option, if they so choose and are able to fully participate. Does that answer your question?
Open it.
Yeah.
We're gonna improvise, I guess.
Well, no, in regard to, there would be planning ahead. So whether we take it a month at a time or several months at a time, with that board mentor saying, okay, you know, we have a few meetings coming up. You might be asked to go to this committee. What does your schedule look like? Or what do your schedules look like? Because we want to always ensure that a student is at the meeting. And if not, then what is the plan around that?
I was going to ask the same question. And I mean, I personally think as flexible as we can be, we should be for students who, I mean, this is an opportunity for them to have some exposure to a unique experience too. And if the interest is there, then, you know, I hope we can accommodate them to any degree that we're able to, and fulfill our, you know, our responsibilities with this task. Thank you for all the work that forum and everybody did on this, with this charge. Did you say they have to write a personal statement, correct?
Yeah, an interest statement, you know, an interest letter of why they want to be a part of this,
I don't
access
see
to this
that on
position.
the slide.
I think that was different.
You know,
Like, go back right there.
I've refreshed it.
That's different than what we have.
But it's okay. I think that's really important, that personal statement, because so what really struck me when I read through this earlier was the qualifications. They're really rigorous. And I personally, like, whether somebody has these strong skills or high quality skills or ability to analyze complex issues, I'd rather somebody who has interest in learning and developing those skills and expresses that interest. You know, I think that personal statement to me would be the most important, as long as they're academically stable and have some skills in the realm of time management. You know, maybe it's somebody who isn't plugged in to, you know, many other activities, but just maybe this lights the light for somebody, and they're able to articulate that has some interest in looking into this and developing some skills rather than already like, being a high flyer in those realms. That's my opinion about that.
I'll piggyback on that because I was thinking, one of the examples I jotted down where it says comfortable with public speaking. I am not comfortable with public speaking, which is probably shocking to most people. And it was one of my strong reservations for actually running for the board. I'm like, I don't like microphones. I don't want to do that. And I was like, I said, but it's important to me to be on the board and I'm going to make myself do it. And so I've gotten better and gotten more comfortable with it. So I think that's important messaging. What Marion was saying is the interest level. And I think in the description, when you were reading through it, there's, interest in government history. So I would say interest in becoming more skilled and comfortable with some of the other components that would make you be a good board member. The other question I had, this is a question I had is, I mean, this could seem like it could be similar to an independent study. Was there any thought on giving credit as an independent study for government? And would this student have a faculty mentor? I mean, I realize they're going to meet with either of you to
If I can.
develop.
So to 2 points. One, Katie, the beauty of this is these are our recommendations to you folks. We know that the Board Development Committee will look further at this and make tweaks or adjustments. So the statement is the second bullet point. We felt very strongly about that, that the student have the ability to at least articulate why they're interested, right? We would like this to be part of the seal of civic readiness. So if the student is interested in pursuing that credential that we put along with diplomas in June, if they've earned it, just like the seal of biliteracy, then they would have to take the initiative to pursue that. And if needed, Megan can talk further about the seals and the different pathways that we have for those, as can I. We didn't want it to make it a requirement because we don't want to discourage students because they might look at that and say, well, I don't want to do that. Or in terms of credits. So yes, it is a possibility that if the student wants to pursue this as an independent study, all they need to do is find a willing staff member, fill out a proposal for it to be an independent study for high school credit, and we would definitely award it. We didn't want to put it as part of the eligibility or process as to not discourage anyone, so those are definitely possibilities. And it was interesting that you brought that up because initially it was part of our requirements and we since removed it to make it more appealing.
Yeah,
Smart.
and this is hot off the press. So what I shared at the draft last week, or what was it to the agenda, we'll get the agenda updated, but this was from our meeting today, even just kind of even some minor tweaking of language and different requirements and qualifications from what we previously shared last week.
I thank you to everybody who was involved, the members of the forum, the people that responded to anything that the forum put out to them, because I mean, regardless of whether or not, we decide to change things a little bit here and there, it's just a great foundation document, even just to springboard from. It really gets us off to a terrific start. And I just, it's really appreciated, all of that work. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and I second that. Thank you for all the work. Just one idea that I don't know how much interest would be through the student body. I mean, we have students on forum, don't we? Don't we have students? I mean, I don't know if they thought that students would be interested in that, but just one idea is that if we're taking 2 students, they really should work together well and maybe have them run as a team. 2 students, taking that on together. and presenting that when you have elections as a team, maybe you would have 2 teams you're voting for or something like that. I don't know, just an idea. I don't know how much interest would be
Yeah,
there.
so 2 things to that, Rosemary. With an open ballot, we'd be subject to the results of the vote, right? However, students could definitely run as a block, and they sometimes do it with student council. With that said, we do have a few kids who are interested in this, and 2 of them, one sits
They
on
talked
student
today.
council and one sits on forum, have expressed interest around this. So that's definitely a good thing. The other piece to it, and I would lean on Katie and Marianne and John for this, at some point, this would need to be presented to the student body. And I would look to the board officers or even the board as a whole, under John's leadership and direction, to have this presented to the student body before the May elections. It is something new, it is something important, and we want to at least have the student body, this first out of the gates, have a good sense of what this is about. I don't envision it just going on the ballot and not having any discussions or rollout about this. So sometime in the early spring, we would need to be thoughtful about that, and perhaps the board development committee could focus on that too.
Anybody else? Well, this is shared decision making in action at its finest. Thank you very much to Forum for the work, and thank you for this presentation. Much appreciated.
Great, thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the elementary update with Mr. Jim Conway, the principal of the elementary school.
All right. Happy New Year, everybody. So, reflecting back to the holiday season, it was an exciting time at the elementary school. Thank you for those of you that were able to attend some events, whether it was our sing-along or pre-K holiday play, which was really exciting to watch 3 and 4-year-olds put on a performance for an audience. That was great. And lots of different classroom events that took place. So kudos to our staff for harnessing the exciting energy that children have at that time of year and putting it all into positive things. PTSO, I want to give some updates and thank you, John and Katie and Marianne, for attending those meetings. That's not something that happens in most districts, and we're really thankful to have that representation there at those meetings. But the Winter Craft Fair was, again, a big success, and I want to let folks know, I think it's our 15th Air Band that we're going to be holding on January 31st at the high school auditorium at 6 p.m. If you've never attended, it's quite a show. I guarantee it is the most exciting event that will take place in Lake George that night. The admission is real fair as well. I don't know, Summer, what is the price for admission? We'll let you guys in for free. But we expect you to buy some snacks at the snack bar. 8 student acts and 1 staff act. And like I said, I think it's the 15th year. Last night at our PTSO meeting, we had a couple of students as representatives from an action team that they're on the Student Lighthouse team make a pitch for support from the PTSO to fund an idea that they have. And it was wonderful. Robert Launchman and Charlie Mondella did a great job, and I know that the experience that they have doing that will help lead them to other great things in their lives. And they did a wonderful job. But I wanted to share some other things that are going on with in a similar vein, that students are creating an idea, coming up with that end in mind, and then making it happen without adults directing them and how to make it happen. We allow them to fail. Sometimes they don't always achieve what their end in mind is, and that's part of that process. But we have, in addition to what the boys presented last night, was this book vending idea. They wanted to get a vending machine with food. They had to meet with Chef Jeff and talk about the health regulations in the district, and can we put certain things in there? And they found out really we can't do that. So they shifted to a book vending machine, which they're going to make this happen. By the end of the year, we'll have a book vending machine in the elementary school because of the work that they do, the funding that they secure, and students will have to do great things according to them to get a token to earn a book. It's not going to be an easy thing. Charlie said, no way. They have to do something really, really impressive. But some of those other things, there are kids that have a plan for handprints outside of the school with the kids and their kids' names. They may be doing that on bricks somewhere. We have some kids that are organizing support for our pre-K. That they're going to be setting up a schedule and going in and supporting students in their learning. We have some other students that are working towards a school newspaper. We have some other kids that have an action team for an animal drawing club, a school store, Pastry Fridays, which actually wound up being a birthday cake celebration on Fridays once a month, and a field trip to a ropes course, possibly Adirondack Extreme, where multiple grade levels attend. So that's some of what they're doing behind the scenes, and we'll keep you posted regarding their progress. And we have a group of students that are going to be sharing their ideas with our cabinet to secure some support, not financial support, but maybe assisting them in moving forward with their plans. I also wanted to mention that pre-K is going really well, and Mr. Luthringer, we have, I think, 20 students as of now for next year. We'll see what that number winds up being, but that's exciting because it's a great indicator for us, knowing that the program is going really well this year. There's a lot of interest and excitement about it. So the numbers are looking good as we look to 25, 26. Also, and I know that John will mention more about this in a minute, on January 25th, we are holding our first ever VEX robotics tournament at the elementary school, and we're excited about that. And I thank Mr. Luthringer for bringing his passion to school and being a leader really in the region to bring up the opportunities or provide those opportunities not only for our students, but students in the region. So looking forward to that. And finally, I want to mention, and Marcy did a nice article on this, but the elementary school is recognized in December for our 6th year as being a lighthouse school with Leader in Me. But additionally, Franklin Covey recognized this as an academic honor school. And what that is, it is very much based on state test results, which again, important measure, not the end all be all, but we're proud of those results. And I encourage you, and I did this last night at PTSO as well, to visit this site, schooldigger.com, and to look at both the junior, senior high school and the elementary school and see the fruits of the labor of our staff who are working very hard each and every day to allow children to demonstrate their proficiency as readers and writers, because the results over the past few years, K-12, have been quite remarkable. So I encourage you to take a look there, and kudos again to the work that our staff and students are doing every day. And that's the report.
Thank you, Jim. As always, I love coming to the PTSO meetings, especially when the students present. And, I think a lot of people generate ideas, but bringing those ideas to fruition through action and watching, listening to these students explain how they're bringing this idea to an ultimate end for the product. Is really, really impressive. And I loved how it went from, a snack machine to brain food, a book machine, so that was really, it was fun.
Thank you, and thanks for being there.
Yeah. Leadership in action.
Else?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is the secondary update with Mr. Frank Koza, our junior senior high school principal.
Hi, I'll be brief because we just had a long presentation. A couple quick items. Liza Osildorf from Warren County Workforce Development is coming on Thursday. Brenda Hoffman, Karen Breslin, the school counselors, along with myself, we're going to start our annual planning of the career fair. So we took a year off. Last year, it was virtual, the career fair, along with it occurred at other places. We're going to be bringing it back here again to Lake George High School. So we're working with the county on that, the Workforce Development Planning Board. Very interestingly, Warren County Courts reached out. And if you're ever interested in a job in the judiciary, they're going to be coming to Lake George High School to speak to our juniors and seniors. And I know John will share the information with you once it's solidified but they're going to be coming to speak to our upperclassmen about a career in the courts. And there's hundreds of different jobs that you can have if you're interested in the court system. So the Warren County court system will be coming here to our library to present to our juniors and seniors. It's kind of unique, not something that's happened here before, and the outreach. So we're pleased that the county court system has reached out to us for that. Our winter concert for the senior high is Monday, January 27th at 7 o'clock in the auditorium. And I can't believe it, but next Friday is the end of the second quarter, the end of the first semester, and we start the third quarter right after that in the second semester. So report cards will be going out that Monday. And that's my update.
Thank you, Fran. Oh, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. So Hadley has been invited, Bolton, Warrensburg. I think what Warren County has realized is they're looking to do more regional fairs rather than doing it at each of the individual schools. Because not uncommon, we're not the only school that has shrunk in size. So having all these different fairs in different schools doesn't make sense to have all the employers come. So they're going to try to make it more of a regional approach.
Nice. Thank you for working on that.
Yeah.
The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report with Mr. John Luthringer, our superintendent.
Thank you, Katie. I just want to take a moment to first commend our building and ground staff for their tireless efforts over the holidays. While we haven't had a ton of snow yet, although we've had sort of what I would call nuisance snow, where it's just enough to plow or just enough to shovel or just enough to salt, but not really enough to go out and play and have fun in. So, but we haven't had a lot of snow. We've had tremendous cold, and we've had, it takes a lot to run our aging facilities. It really does. And we had some small breaks on some events over the holidays, including Christmas Eve, and our building and ground staff, they're outstanding. They are outstanding. They know the importance of timely checks and making sure water damage is limited, and cleaning things up and getting our heat back and going. So when our teachers come back to work right after the holidays, their rooms are ready to roll. So we did have some issues over break, but they were addressed quickly, and we're still addressing things even this week and moving forward. But I just want to commend them for the work that they do each and every day to keep us nice and warm. As Mr. Conway mentioned, we are excited for our VEX Robotics tournament. It is Saturday, January 25th. I just want to thank the volunteers, advisors, PTSO, for bringing this to life. We have a lot of representatives, the principals, Ms. Coker. We are all invested in bringing this to life for our students. We have 5 VEX Robotics teams participating. That's between the elementary and the senior high school. And this, just so you all know, this is grades 4 through 8. It's the VEX IQ, so it's sort of the intermediate level of VEX Robotics. And then our high school students are in what's called VRC, and they will have their own tournaments. But we're excited to bring this to life here for not only our students, but regionally, we have 3 other local schools participating. So it's a nice local tournament. There aren't a lot of them in our area. We're really the second district to offer this for our students, and we hope to see it continue to grow in support of STEM education and robotics. A third item I have here is just that it's exciting that New York State Education Department has officially approved our transportation facility capital project. It took nearly a year. I went back and looked at it. It was submitted basically in January last year, January, February. So it really took a year to work its way through all the layers of the State Education Department. And there were certainly we had to submit other things, but we've crossed the finish line, I guess, is the most important part. We've actively established the bid process already. That started in mid to late November. The bids, we have an exciting day on Thursday of this week where bids are due. So that means the general contractor and other subcontractors are submitting their bids. That means like electrical or mechanical site work. Those are all going to be submitted on Thursday at 3 o'clock. We will be opening the bids at 3:45 with our construction manager and our architectural firm. Those recommendations and approval will go to the Board of Education for the special meeting. So we've talked about that, a need for a special meeting on January 22nd. It will be short. but it is, excuse me, it is important to award those contracts so those individuals can get working rather quickly. As we anticipate site work starting before April 1st, and then really a more of a groundbreaking ceremony slightly after that, where real shovels and heavy machinery will be starting. We'll be communicating all of that out to the public very shortly. It will be part of the winter newsletter as we anticipate a lot of activity starting there in the coming months. So it's exciting news, good news here as we continue to forge ahead. And we'll have quite a few presentations, and the Building and Grounds Committee will be busy over the next a year and a half of updates and things like that. This is also the time where we're never really officially out of it, but budget development season, it seems like it is something that is ongoing. We're always looking at future planning, long-term planning, but this is the time of year where the real budgeting developments begins. Bonnie and her team and the administrative staff, we've been very active in developing that, collaborating with departments, looking at different options and planning for the year. So we know every budget presents its challenges. As we know, we certainly were faced with, as I've mentioned, aging buildings and infrastructure, mandates, contractual obligations, other unknowns. But we're encouraged and we're excited about this time of year. And we'll be starting our budget presentations next month at the Board of Education meeting in February with non-instructional budget presentation. One of the pieces of why we're encouraged is today, Governor Hochul had her State of the State today, and there were some encouraging, little tidbits that came out of it. Unlike last year, where she announced really what ended up being a state aid cut that was restored, there was no mention of that in this State of the State. There was actually very little mention of education in the State of the State today. So it does appear, as she's mentioned before, that foundation aid will remain stable. So for us as a school district that's on safe, harmless, that's very important to us. It's one of our advocacy points that the board will be approving today. But it is appearing that it's going to be stable. Some of the other points that she mentioned were universal meals for students and no cost to families across the state. That already happens here in Lake George through the community eligibility provision, but certainly something that there's a lot of advocacy and passion around as well in all districts. So we know more to come during legislative season. Things will change. There'll be the different one house budget proposals. So this is just a start, but signs were encouraging, at least with funding remaining stable, which is really important. So we'll continue to kind of keep tabs on where that goes. And finally, I just want to mention some information in regards to the Wolverine football program, as I, along with Warrensburg and Bolton superintendents, are recommending renewal of the program at the meeting tonight. Both Bolton and Warrensburg actually approved the merger renewal yesterday. But prior to the holidays, I shared information out with the community that I felt was important to share. Actually, all three superintendents shared some information. As we all know, we've faced some challenges in the fall. Those are well documented, and certainly I've discussed them at board meetings. So I just wanted to take a moment to just kind of summarize some points of the letter that I shared with all the families as we can move forward here in what I would consider a new chapter of our program. So really, to address the concerns and really to ensure long-term success of our program, it first has to start with the Board of Education, supporting the program and supporting extracurriculars, which I know the board wholly does, as well as the superintendent and all of our district. Extracurricular opportunities are critical for our students, and we're committed to renewing the merger as recommended tonight. So that's kind of the first step that has to happen each year. It's a requirement through NISVA and Section 2 for the fall sports. But this annual renewal is a little bit different, as it's going to be accompanied by a renewed focus on collaboration and commitment to developing new procedures that will strengthen the program for years to come. As I shared, the three superintendents, athletic directors, and the high school principals of the three districts have already started collaboration on new procedures and will continue over the coming months. These include a shared hiring process for coaches with input and representation from each district, a focus on fostering a positive, inclusive program culture aligned with our district's collective mission and values, And we have a lot to work on, but we all are on the same page with what we're looking for. So we're intending, once the merger renewal process is finalized here, that we'll really begin in earnest the work that lies ahead of us over the coming months in really developing consistency among the three districts that that are in line with all of our expectations. We want our student athletes to have a high quality experience, and we intend to really build a stronger and more sustainable program. And we really know that it's been a challenging time for our community. We certainly understand that. We appreciate the patience and understanding as we work through these program initiatives. And we look forward to really continuing to provide our students with valuable extracurricular opportunities that really cultivate teamwork, sportsmanship, and a sense of community pride. So that's our goal over these next coming months here. Step one is to get this renewal approved, and then we'll be sharing more information with the community and the boards of education as we continue to plan and prepare for the fall. So I just wanted to share that with all of you. So thank you.
Do you have any questions about that?
I just want to say thank you for all the efforts to ensure a sustainable football program for students and for the intentional efforts to make it strong and sustainable. It's much appreciated.
I appreciate all the collaboration with the superintendents and the work between all the districts, not only in the planning phase, but knowing that that's important going forward. I think that is a huge piece in the sustainability. And, you know, mergers are becoming more and more common because I know for us, extracurriculars are really important. And sometimes the only way to make these opportunities is to have the mergers. And you know, we're all on a learning curve. And so thank you for the work doing that. Anybody have any? Okay. The next item on the agenda is Audit and Finance Committee report with Mario Fasulo, who is the chair of that committee.
Thanks, Katie. We reviewed the treasurer's report for November and December. Some areas to note included school tax receipts in November that were about $490,000. We also had state aid receipts for basic aid, excess cost aid, and lottery aid that totaled $225,000. And then we had interest for the 2 months totaling $149,000. The business office took some reserve funds and invested them in a 6-month CD while the interest rates were still healthy. This will mature in 6 months. That's the investment period. And right now we've encumbered about 90% of the original budget, which is very similar and on track to last year. The claim auditors report for November, December, that we reviewed it. There was nothing noteworthy on there. That is item D on the business consent agenda. We also reviewed the state tax collection reconciliation. Due to the results of the SCAR, which is the Small Claims Assessment Reviews, and Article 7, we've been talking about this for several meetings now. The judgments resulted in about $10,000 less taxes collected from the tax levy. So the business office is going to transfer money from the tax certiorari reserve that will occur by the end of the fiscal year to reconcile the less taxes we're bringing in. At the end of the tax collection period, about 93.86% of the taxes were collected. So the taxes that were not collected during that period are then re-levied on the homeowners. And if the taxes still remain unpaid, the counties are required to make us whole, and then they're on the hook to go collect those taxes. But we should be whole by April 1, 2025. We also reviewed the RFP schedule, which is the request for proposal. So every year we're required to invite and collaborate with interested parties, qualified agencies in providing preschool services, ensuring that all the state guidelines are in compliance. In addition to the universal pre-K RFP this year, in June, our insurance contract expires. So we had a lengthy discussion about whether to conduct a formal RFP this year or request an extension from the current agent. And we concluded that it was best practice to continue the RFP cycle, stay on the regular schedule that we're on, and proceed with a formal RFP process for the insurance company. And then we also we talked about the budget. Right now, the future budget planning, acknowledging a lot of variables that are unknown that could impact the budget either way, the state aid, the tax cap, and then we have contract negotiations that are going on right now. So the first budget presentation will be the non-instructional budget. That consists of administrative costs, buildings and grounds, facilities maintenance, and transportation. So we are projecting a significant increase in this area to maintain safety and compliance in our daily operations. We're also going to continue implementing an equipment replacement cycle, which we discussed a couple of meetings ago. And we know that our buildings are older and they need a little bit more repairs and maintenance. And so other areas of the budgets, as they're finalized, we'll make adjustments to the non-instructional budgets if we need to. And that was everything that we covered.
Anybody have any questions? Thank you, Mario, for letting us know what the acronyms mean. I appreciate that. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Culture and Climate Committee report, and Donna Prime, who's the chair of that committee, will give that report.
Hey, sorry. The Culture and Climate Committee met in December, beginning December. We started the meeting by reviewing the committee charter. There were some edits that we made to help define the charge of the committee. The two significant changes were, the first one was to make it more explicit in the charter that this committee will be the center of oversight for reporting on the progress of goals that are outlined in the student-centered learning environment policy. And then the other significant change was the sentence was added that outlined the process for a committee member to add an item to a meeting agenda if it was felt it was needed before the meeting. Following the charter work, John and Megan presented to us several initiatives that they are in progress with that are going to should help ensure that our school environment is promoting the CREATE values of collaboration, respect, excellence, accountability, trust, and empathy. Important values. They've been doing a couple different initiatives. One major one is working with BOCES. There's what's called the WIDE Regional Network, which stands for Wellness, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity. John and Megan are both in working groups that are focused on elevating student voices. So there's going to be an assembly of selected 7th to 9th grade students from all over the region. In March, they're all going to go to a workshop to discuss ways to develop a school environment that fosters a sense of belonging for all students. So John and Megan have already been meeting with advisors of several of our school student groups to determine the best selection of students from our district to attend this conference. These students will then bring back what they learn and help determine the best way to share what they learned with the other students in the district. In addition to the student presentation, we may also invite an outside group to present to the students on topic of creating an atmosphere of belonging for all students. Other things that are going on, there are a couple of surveys that are going to be done this year. The Warren Washington County Council for Prevention biannual student survey on substance use. The survey's been done. We'll get the results near the end of the school year. And also our own district climate survey will be made available to students, staff, and parents next semester, and we'll review the results of that survey at our spring committee meeting. Another area that's being worked on, John outlined the progress being made in the area of restorative practices. This focuses on reparation, restoring and healing relationships versus punishment after an undesirable behavior. So these are practices that emphasize accountability, but also work on increasing empathy. The administration leaders have already completed a book study on this topic, and currently there's 34 teachers in the district who voluntarily signed up to do a book study on the same topic. So over the course of winter break, they were given the book to read. It's 48 now? Okay. Wow. Great. Okay. 48. That's amazing. That's great. So over the course of the winter break, they read the book. That was the plan. Okay. And then they're going to have discussion groups and talk about efforts and how they're implementing their practices. And so they'll all work together on that. So that's really exciting.
Yeah.
And lastly, the school in the fall developed a QR code method for anonymous tip line for students to report any concerns that they have. The hope is that this way the students will feel more comfortable to speak up when there are problems. And John did report that it had already been used several times. So that's a good inclusion. We'll meet again in the spring at a date to be determined, but after that BOCES summit in March, so we can hear about the progress. So, yeah. Any questions?
Thank you. That a lot of good stuff, a lot of good news and a packed agenda and 48 participating in that book study. That's really impressive. Yeah. Thank you, Donna. The next item on the agenda is the Policy Committee report, and Marion McKenzie, who's the chair of that committee, will give that report.
Okay, so this evening, we have 9 documents moving forward to second read. And we covered each of those at last month's board meeting. And we have got 6 documents being recommended to first read tonight, and 1 policy that was reviewed with no recommended changes. So I'll go through each of those. Under first read, policies 5741, drug and alcohol testing for school bus drivers. The policy committee looked at this policy per our routine manual review, made some very minor wordsmithing suggestions, and let me back up for a minute. We had our most recent policy meeting was just yesterday. The minutes from that meeting will be present in next month's board meeting agenda, but we did touch on each of these policies that are moving to first read tonight. So last night, in addition to the minor wordsmithing with this policy, we did just have some general discussion to be clear about the rigorous drug and alcohol monitoring practices that are implemented to ensure school bus transportation safety. Next policy is 6562. This is employment of retired persons. And again, there were just minor wordsmithing suggestions here, nothing substantive. 5840, artificial intelligence, AI. This is a new policy. We talked about this last month. John and Megan did their presentation, and this is this policy was developed first at the district level using a Erie One BOCES template. I think maybe some things from the NYSBA sample were integrated as well. And we had the opportunity to discuss this policy last night at our meeting. And, key points, the group acknowledged that, in the world of AI, the details change rapidly. And so the district will, be served by reviewing this policy more frequently than every 5 years, like the standard for the rest of the manual. Likely every 2 years would be a minimum for reviewing. And we also acknowledge the potential need for policy updates once this policy is actually put into practice, and then there's new data and collaborative input will become available. The next policy is 7315, Student Acceptable Use Policy, AUP. Again, just minor wordsmithing clarifications suggested. This was our routine manual review. And same for 7511, immunization of students, routine manual review, minor wordsmithing suggestions. And then 7555, educational services for married or pregnant students. This is a new Erie One BOCES policy that came to us in response to the U.S. Department of Education's amended Title IX regulations, which expand district obligations with respect to married and pregnant students. Districts must offer reasonable modifications, and they must ensure that students can access lactation spaces, which must meet certain requirements outlined in the law. Policy Committee is suggesting an additional revision, which articulates a commitment to partnering with married or pregnant students to support meeting their individual needs. And then the last one was 7360, Weapons in School and the Gun-Free Schools Act. The committee reviewed that policy and had no suggested revisions. And then in our meeting, we discussed a good handful of other policies. Most, if not all of them, will be moving forward likely to first read next month. And so I won't report out on those right now because they'll be present next month along with the make more sense and be more meaningful at that time. our next meeting then is in March. That's my report. Any questions?
I hear you correctly. 7555 is a new policy. It's not a review of an existing policy.
Yes,
We never had, I'm surprised.
it was situated in a different policy, Mario, and I forget the name of that policy
Okay.
off
That's
the top of my head, but so it was, do you remember what the policy was?
That's okay.
I can find out and get back to you, but last month, so we had Erie One BOCES, because of this update, they took the material relating to married and pregnant students out of another policy and set
Created
it
its own.
aside and gave it its own.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then did they add to it or did they just take it all in?
Yes, it's to reflect these new regulations. That
Yeah,
was,
the state.
those are additional components.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
that's a really good question.
Mariana was 8130, which was equal educational opportunities. That was the existing policy that had this language
Yeah.
previously.
Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the first of our two public comments sections. And at this point, we don't have anybody signed up. We have a sign-up sheet just so we can be organized and have folks contact information to be able to get back to them more easily. If you did not sign up, you are welcome to still make a public comment. The first one is related to agenda items, and the second comment section is for other topics. Is there anybody who didn't sign up that wants to comment? If you are attending virtually, you can send your comment or question to boe@lkgeorge.org, and the superintendent and board will get that that email, and we'll be able to respond to you at some point after the meeting. Okay, the next section is school business, and the first item under school business is the school business consent agenda.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the school business consent agenda items A through H. In summary, item A is a motion to approve the regular minutes from last month. Item B is a motion to approve the Committee on Special Education recommendations. Items C and D are in reference to the treasurer's report and claims audit reports reviewed at Audit and Finance. Item E is a motion to approve the policies moving forward to second read. Item F is a motion to approve the varsity wrestling field trip to Vernon, Verona Central School District for a competition. Item G is a motion to approve the wrestling field trip to attend the first annual Girls Invitational Tournament at Canandaigua Academy on or about January 24th. And item H is a motion to authorize the administration to take action to submit an application to the New York State Public High School Athletic Association for the express purpose of combining students from the Lake George Central School District, Warrensburg Central School District, and Bolton Central School District to form a singular football team for the 2025-26 football season.
So moved.
Is there any questions? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is advocacy priorities for the 2025 legislative session.
Thank you. And just as a quick reminder here, these advocacy priorities are developed within the region, and there's more power in numbers. So we do have a very robust advocacy committee in our local BOCES region. All 31 school districts are able to contribute to this. And there's a small committee that does finalize the asked resolution, and then these do get sent to all of our local and state legislators. So as recommended by the superintendent, be resolved that the Board of Education of Lake George Central School District hereby approves the following resolution in regards to advocacy as presented on the four main advocacy points representing school aid, including foundation aid, graduation requirements, workforce development, and zero emission buses.
Have any questions? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. The next item next section is faculty, staff recognitions. And I just wanted to note that the consent agendas are quick. We have them for efficiency. There is a lot of work that goes into all the items that are on the consent agenda from our faculty, administration. The board spends a lot of time reading and preparing for these. So it looks like things happen in a snap, these important decisions, but there's a lot of work behind them. So just to note that as our next consent item is faculty, staff resignations.
As recommended by the superintendent, be resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby accepts the resignation of Casimira Hensler from the position of special education teacher effective June 27th, 2025.
Do we have a motion? Second?
Second.
Do we have any questions? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Yes. Yes. Next item on the agenda is the faculty staff appointment consent agenda.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the faculty staff consent appointments, items A through B. Item A is a motion to appoint Gabriel Sutton as a bus driver trainee. And item B is a motion to amend the 24-25 coaches list and volunteer coaches list associated with those amendments.
Do we have a motion? Any questions? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. And we
Good.
welcome. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment and recognize Chad Holderman as our new varsity baseball coach, who's present in the audience. Thank you, Chad, for coming.
Thank you. Welcome and thank you for attending the meeting. The next item on our agenda is our second public comment section. Do we have any sign up for that? Okay. The next item on the agenda is Board of Education comments and discussion. Do you have any topics or?
Well, I was just going to ask if you could, our board self-eval process is getting
Yes.
started. Can you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we do an annual board self-evaluation using Super Eval, which is a tool that we've used for maybe 4 or 5 years now. And we also use that for the superintendent. So the board self-evaluation, the tool is open to us now. And our superintendent, John Luthringer, participates in that along with the board. And we will, we fill that out individually. It will be consolidated. We'll review that. And we'll have an opportunity next month in executive session to review that. And we will, as we review that, the personal components of that will be able to filter out the pieces that are not personal and report out the areas that we use that to understand where we can grow, understand what we're doing well, and gives us an opportunity to know where do we want to educate ourselves? What opportunities do we want to bring forward to improve? So do you have any thoughts, ideas?
No. Just the timeline, our input should be in by, I forget. what the date
February
is.
2nd.
February 2nd.
February
Okay.
2nd. And then that gives us, I will consolidate it, and that gives us time to review it, review everyone's comments so that we're ready to discuss it. All right. Okay. Any other topics?
Well, I was just going to say, Jeff, we should probably maybe connect about the Super Eval tool a little bit before, because you've never used that tool.
I have not.
Yeah.
I just made sure yesterday that I could actually get in.
Okay.
Touched it yet, but.
I haven't either. But let's plan to just have it connect at some point soon. Thanks.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the proposed executive session. The Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby proposes entering into an executive session to discuss collective bargaining negotiations, the Lake George Education Association, pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law. Do I have a motion? Any questions? Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Well, we do open back up into public at the end, but we do not anticipate taking any action. So I'll get this by the end of the year.